All right, Brother Rick, what's the topic of today's episode?
Well, the episode is called People of Protest, and it revolves around the Black-led protests that have gone on historically in America and the ones that are going on right now. So, we're going to talk about the protests that many of you likely know about that have been going on since the death of George Floyd, and the history behind protests much like that one. And so we hope you guys stay tuned. Before we get into that, we're going to roll that beautiful, beautiful theme music.
1, you need to know that Black Lives Matter. 2, we believe in love, we believe in laughter. 3, we bring in facts, all the information gathered. Not just a podcast, this is Black Lives Chatter. 1, you need to know that Black Lives Matter. 2, we believe in love, we believe in laughter. 3, we bring in facts, all the information gathered. Not just a podcast, this is Black Lives Chatter. Vic and Ricky in the lab with a sound mind. 2 black kings, I think it's crown time. Turn on the cast and you're up for your downtime. We need a Black Lives outlet, think I found mine. Black Lives Chatter because Black Lives Matter. We got interviews, opinions, and plenty witty banter. Keep you updated on the topics of the culture. Listen to the news while we watch out for the vultures.
What's up, Brother Vic?
Yo, Brother Rick, how you been?
I've been all right, man. To quote Lil Baby, it's been a hell of a year.
Yeah, the quote Little Baby. That's a funny quote.
Dude, 2020 has been a doozy, man.
Yeah, man. I feel like it's been punching us every week with something new. Someone's either
every
dying, or
day.
there's a new virus strain, or it's coming back. It's crazy stuff, man.
Yeah. Like the elections heating up, general election.
Mm-hmm.
Kanye declared and then dropped out of the race.
No, I heard he was back in. I don't know where I heard that from, though. It might just be fake.
I'm not gonna lie, man. I hope not.
You're not gonna vote for him?
Nah, man. I think we've seen what happens when you vote for somebody that has no political experience to the highest political office in this country.
Brother Rick, do I detect some shade? Are you sending shade?
No political shade. BLM has no political affiliations whatsoever, and the views of me right now do not reflect the views of BLC. Did I say BLM at first?
Yeah, you may have.
Okay, whatever. Well, people know what I'm talking about.
Well, that being said, if Kanye decides to vote, we will fully endorse him. Our podcast will pretty much run his whole campaign. We've been in talks with him, and he says he makes sure it says Yeezy everywhere, Yeezy 2020. And so
exactly, because even though it's almost November and he's declaring we're all about late registrations.
Oh, see, I was trying to work that in, but you beat me to the punch. That was really good.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh,
but yeah,
dude, it's been a while.
Yeah, we've been busy. Sorry for we missed a month, but people out here having babies and whatnot.
Yeah. For those of you who do not know, who don't follow me on Instagram or my other social media, my daughter Raina was born on May 5th of this year, and she's been such a explosion of light in our lives, me and my wife.
Mm-hmm.
But she has also been taking up quite a bit of our time, of course, as newborns do.
Mm-hmm.
And so of course, it's kind of backlogged us a little bit, but I'm really happy to be able to be talking with you, Brother Vic, and with the rest of the BLC listeners. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, no, I'm happy. I'm happy you had that nice, beautiful baby. It's been a blessing. Your family, definitely. I see how happy it's made everyone, man. So,
yeah.
I wish you best of luck with raising a kid. It seems like a lot of work.
I wish you the best of luck with helping us, man.
I'll think about it.
Oh, man. Ever since the death of George Floyd on May 25th, America has been ablaze from coast to coast with protests against police brutality, with Black Americans at the forefront of the movement.
Seeing these protests may be startling to some, but they are not really new. For generations, Black people have used protests to make their voices heard about racial injustice and inequality.
Many times, these protests produced historic change, but obviously there's still a lot of work to do. In this episode, we're going to talk about the Black-led protests and movements that shaped our past and are now shaping our future. Let's start by talking about the March in Manhattan, which is also known as the Silent Parade. It took place on July 28th of 1917 and is one of the first ever recorded civil rights protests, which was in response to a string of violent attacks on African Americans by whites. These instances included the lynching of a black man by 10,000 white people in Waco, Texas, and another instance where a group of 5,000 lynched a black man in Tennessee. There was also the race riots in St. Louis, Missouri. That was back and forth instances of violence between white and black people that finally erupted into all-out violence from whites against black people. They shot, stabbed, and lynched black men, women, children, and elderly as revenge. The governor called the National Guard, who were largely ineffective and by some accounts joined in on the violence against black people. After 24 hours of violence, at least 40 and at most 200 black people were dead, and more than 6,000 black people were left homeless by the fires set to black neighborhoods by white people.
All of this led to the NAACP organizing a march through Manhattan to protest this widespread violence against African Americans. Reverend Charles Martin, NAACP secretary, provided a voice for the protest, saying, "We march in memory of our butchered dead, the massacre of the honest toilers who were removing the reproach of laziness and thriftlessness hurled at the entire race. They died to prove our worthiness to live." The silent parade was very different from many other black-led protests in that there was no violence from counter-protesters or police and no arrest. As a result, according to the New York Times, it was one of the most quiet and orderly demonstrations ever witnessed.
Let's fast forward to March 1965. Despite the fact that the Civil Rights Act had been passed the year before in 1964, black people who wanted to vote faced passionate opposition from Southern whites. Those white Southerners realized the amount of power that African Americans could wield at the ballot box and tried to block them from using that power in every way they could. In response to that, and the death of black protester Jimmy Lee Jackson at the hands of an Alabama state trooper, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, led by Martin Luther King Jr., organized a protest that doubled as a voter registration campaign, intended to help black people within the 54-mile distance from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, get registered for the upcoming election.
The peaceful protesters, numbering at about 600, started their march at Selma, but the group had only reached the Edmund Pettus Bridge just outside Selma when the Alabama state troopers descended upon them. The state troopers tear-gassed the black marchers and beat them with nightsticks and whips until they had retreated back to Selma. That day would go down in history as Bloody Sunday.
All of this actually wound up being televised, and civil rights activists and religious leaders across the racial and denominational spectrum that watched the atrocities committed against these peaceful protesters were outraged to the point that they joined the Selma marchers for a second Selma march that would commence on March 9th, 1965. This time, 2,000 black and white marchers reached the Edmund Pettus Bridge to find a blockade by Alabama law enforcement. This time, Martin Luther King Jr. stopped the march and the group prayed together. This time, the state troopers on the bridge stood aside and allowed the protesters to pass.
Despite this, the march did not go much further than the Edmund Pettus Bridge that day, and did not fully continue until March 21st, after three things had happened. The first thing that happened was Alabama law enforcement was ordered to permit the march to continue by a U.S. District Court judge.
The second thing that happened was President Lyndon B. Johnson went on national television to confirm his support for the protesters in Selma and announce a new voting rights bill.
The third thing that happened was that President Johnson sent U.S. Army troops and the Alabama National Guard to escort and to protect the Selma marchers. The marchers reached Montgomery on March 25th, and a Voting Rights Act of 1965 was passed in August. The act put a stop to the literacy tests that were used to disqualify African Americans from being able to vote. It strengthened federal oversight in order to end voter suppression practices, and it was the beginning of the end for poll taxes that were used to financially discourage black people in the South from voting. Most importantly, it allowed black Americans to finally wield the political power that was their birthright, but that had been kept from them for centuries.
Today, how long will it take? Somebody's asking, how long will prejudice blind the visions of men? I come to say to you this afternoon, However difficult the moment,
Yes, sir.
however frustrating the hour, it will not be long, because truth crushed earth will rise again.
Yes, sir.
How long? Not long.
Yes, sir.
Because no longer
The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were a monumental leap forward for Black Americans, but they continued to be marginalized in every area of society as a result of systemic racism, and also were often the targets of extreme racial violence.
Between 1965 and 1969, just 4 years, influential Black leaders Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and Fred Hampton were assassinated. Unfairness in the justice system and police brutality against African Americans went unchecked for decades and led to the Detroit riots in 1965 and the Rodney King riots in 1991. Continued blatant disregard for Black lives in America grew increasingly difficult for whites to ignore because of the news media and the eventual proliferation of camera phones and social media that captured and displayed raw footage of the frequent use of excessive force against people of color by police. Even as President Barack Obama occupied the highest seat of American government, it was clear that this country placed little to no value on Black life. Yet many were still oblivious to that fact. Someone needed to step up, start a new protest, and ensure that America remained oblivious no longer. And someone did.
In 2012, 17-year-old Trayvon Martin was shot and killed by George Zimmerman in Sanford, Florida. Martin was unarmed when he was shot by Zimmerman. The manslaughter and second-degree murder charges that were brought against Zimmerman in the aftermath of Martin's death gained national attention as millions wondered just how much Trayvon Martin's killing had to do with his race. Zimmerman's attorneys took the angle of self-defense, and they succeeded, winning him a not guilty verdict on July 13th of 2013. The shock, disbelief, and outrage collectively felt by Black Americans after hearing this verdict gave birth to the Black Lives Matter movement.
Okay. So, Brother Rick, this might sound like a dumb question, but I feel like our listeners need to know. What is the Black Lives Matter movement?
No dumb questions, bro. You're absolutely right. It's important for everyone to get a clear picture of what Black Lives Matter is about. Besides being the movement that inspired the name of our little podcast, BLM started as a social media hashtag and evolved into a movement that was founded by 3 Black women, 3 Black queens, Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi. Its website describes it as a, quote, global organization in the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada whose mission is to eradicate white supremacy and build power to intervene in violence inflicted on Black communities, by the state and vigilantes, end quote. In their description, they go on to say, quote, by combating and countering acts of violence, creating space for Black imagination and innovation, and centering Black joy, we are winning immediate improvements in our lives, end quote.
Okay, so I have another question. This sounds like a positive organization with a positive mission. So why have so many people said so many negative things about it? Recently, President Trump tweeted that it is a symbol of hate. Black Lives Matter has also been compared by some to the Ku Klux Klan, which of course is a well-known hate group founded on racism, xenophobia, and white supremacy. Are those comparisons even close to accurate?
Short answer, hell no. Long answer, just like the All Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter hashtags that came after Black Lives Matter was created, any characterizations of BLM as hateful towards white people or opposed to the existence or prosperity of white people or anyone else are reactionary, and they're meant to distract from the real purpose of the movement, to ensure for Black people the safety and peace promised to all Americans in our Constitution, and to lay claim to the foundational principles that were carved into this nation's soul by the Declaration of Independence.
To the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Sure, Black Lives Matter has been and continues to be disruptive. In 2015, a few BLM demonstrators interrupted a Bernie Sanders campaign so intensely that Sanders left without giving his speech. A pair of protesters did something similar when they confronted Hillary Clinton at a 2016 fundraiser about her past statements that young Black men were, quote, super predators, and that Americans needed to, quote, bring them to heel. That's HEEL. like a dog. Just last month, BLM protesters disrupted a Back the Blue rally on June 27th in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and they had signs that said, quote, "Jail killer cops."
Now, being disruptive is the whole point, though. America cannot be allowed to carry on with business as usual while Black people constantly face systemic racism, marginalization, and devaluation. This country needs to be confronted with the reality of Black life in America, no matter how uncomfortable or inconvenient it is. That's the role that Black Lives Matter has taken on.
Exactly. And the longer the list of Black lives lost to police brutality and misconduct has grown, Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, Philando Castile, Michael Brown, Freddie Gray, Breona Taylor, the more BLM has had to turn up the heat on the collective consciousness of America. Today, Black Lives Matter stands at the forefront of the ongoing protests that began after 4 police officers participated in the completely unnecessary death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Through the cell phone footage of nearby onlookers, the world saw what it's like to be a Black man in America, being suspected of using a counterfeit bill by a grocery store clerk and then being handed a death sentence by police. The time has come for this to stop. We have to make sure that it stops. All right, so it was important to us, me and Vic, to bring a podcast episode that is relevant, to our time, that is, poignant, and that is something you guys can understand. As far as we know that there are protests going on right now, all across the country, across the world, even.
Yeah,
I've seen protesters. Yeah, I've seen protesters in Europe and in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
We all know that it started after the death of George Floyd, but that's not the root of the issue. There is systemic problems. We all know that involve police brutality, that involve other issues that run very deep in America, where Black people and people of color are disadvantaged, and so many lives have been taken necessarily by police brutality. And so there's a conversation going on right now about how can we change that? How can it end? You know what I mean? A lot of people, you may hear the term defund the police, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what a lot of people are saying. And so actually, let's talk about it for just a little bit. Like,
okay,
Vic, what does that mean to you? Like, when you hear that, that term, defund the police, like what do you think?
So to me, before I actually looked into it, I was like, we can't just stop all police. That's what I originally thought. And I was like, is that what they mean? And I looked into it, and then in fact, that's not what they mean. So hearing that term, what I understand it as, it's more like, instead of spending so much money on like having such a large budget for the police, we would kind of move that money around to different facilities, I guess you would say, or different programs for people. So instead of spending money on like artillery or whatever the cops have nowadays, let's roll that back a little bit, and we spend that money somewhere else. Is that a correct understanding of defund the police?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you hit it right there on the nose. That it's not a question of, there are some, I admit, that may want police gone completely, right?
Yeah, which is the more
but I believe those people, I believe those people are in the vast minority of those who wish to see a police force whose powers are reined in, right? Yeah. And that, of course, to some people may be an idea that is kind of nerve-wracking and may make you kind of fearful. And I think that's because as a country, it's been a long time since we experienced a police force that didn't have unlimited power, unlimited resources to terrorize not only minorities, but whoever they see fit in any circumstance that they see fit. And so the idea here is that, maybe we dial back that power a bit. Maybe we put in place more accountability, more measures of accountability, so that those who are in that job of protecting and serving, that they think twice about acting irresponsibly, especially when life and death is concerned.
Yeah, no, of course. And I've actually heard different different arguments from different sides of the table. And one argument was saying that we shouldn't defund the police. And, I think to do your due diligence, I think you should hear everything so that way you can make you can have an honest understanding of what's going on. The one guy was saying, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but instead of defunding the police, he was saying we should put that money towards better training for police. And I'm like, yeah, but I feel like we should still be able to defund the police a little bit, but they do need better training from my understanding as well. Better training on how to handle these situations. Like, George Floyd definitely shouldn't have died. Like that's real. Right.
Yeah.
So
I think everybody, go, my bad.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say just I think everybody can agree. You're right, man. George Floyd's death is unnecessary, and it's like he was a American citizen, right? A taxpayer, and it's our taxpayer dollars that pay not only the salaries of police. We also pay for the lawsuits that are brought against police officers that engage in misconduct. And so, when a person wins a lawsuit, it's taxpayer money, that goes to pay that plaintiff their judgment money. And so, the idea here is like, instead of spending all that money on, the weaponization, right? Instead of spending all that money on paying people damages after the fact, I think your friend is onto something. Maybe we spend more time or spend more money, I should say, training police officers on proper protocol, making sure that these men are very well prepared to go into the workforce and to work in different communities with less bias. I guess it's going to be difficult to say with no bias at all because we're all human and have some sort, but with limited bias and an understanding of diversity and the different cultures and the different psychologies of different types of people. That all is really important.
It's always sad also to see that fear in the cops' eyes when they talk about their encounter with a black person or an African American. It's like it's always shoot first and ask questions later with those situations where people unfortunately lost their lives. Like the one dude, I forget his name, forgive me. But the one lady like burst into his house while he was just sitting around doing whatever, and she shot him.
Right, Breona Taylor. Yeah.
No, not Breona Taylor.
No, Botham Jean. You mean Botham Jean? Yeah.
Yeah. That was
Amber Geiger.
Yeah. So like this dude's just sitting in his own apartment. She's like, I thought that I was being robbed. It's like that's already a problem. The fact that you see a black guy, you think you're getting robbed. It's how do you beat that, man? I think that is the heart of the issue. It's like no amount of training can fix racism, man. Like we can train you more, but if you still hate us, you still hate us at the end of the day. This is a tad bit of a tangent, but just the whole point of the podcast for me was so that way I can kind of relay my feelings as a black person in America to other people and to younger people, older people, whoever wants to listen. And there's a story. I was in RA in college, right? And we used to have these like get-togethers every year called RA training. It was just RA training for a couple of weeks, and we get to know each other on a personal level. And of course, we start talking about minorities in America and what it's like to be a minority. One girl kind of like said she felt really bad. And she was like, sometimes, like at night or something, if I saw a black guy in the street or whatever, I would cross to the other side so that way I could avoid him. Right. Or a black guy hanging out in front of a convenience store or something like that. And then I said to them, I was like, listen, you may think that, but I am that big black guy on the corner. So you need to realize that who you're judging is just someone you don't know yet. And I don't want to go into it too much, but that's the whole idea is that as a black people in America, we are profiled, and it's just kind of sad. Like,
it definitely is.
Yeah, like I had campus police called on me while I was on RA duty before, which again, a lot of people don't know about that. But like, imagine being, pretty much being the guy who has the keys to the kingdom, but you still get the cops calling on you for doing your job.
Dude, I'm telling you, we see so many examples of that. Where you just they have the term driving while black, right? But now you don't even have to be, driving or have a cop pull you over. People will call the cops on you. So it's just like this this thing of like existing while black,
Yeah. And,
or being in the wrong place where you know, not that you don't belong there, you know, but just that people perceive you as out of place and somewhere, you know, I guess to some people, if you're not in a hood, or you're not in a ghetto on the corner, you're you know, don't belong there, and you're I guess there to cause trouble.
you know, in reality, a lot of our friends, let's say, you know, I have a lot of white friends, and I'm sure you do too, right? You have a couple white friends. And a lot of the time, I feel like, again, they are, at least I don't know, right? They're not racist, right? But they also don't understand that these things happen to us, and we just don't talk about them. And I think more often than not, we have these occurrences that are just sad. Yeah, sad things that happen to us, and we kind of just brush them under the rug. Like, none of my friends knew about that. I posted it on Facebook the other day, and everyone was like, "Oh man, I'm so sad it happened." And I'm like, "Yeah, I appreciate you said it happened, but like, I definitely didn't want to talk about it back then because, again, we also don't want to be singled out for it." And we talked about it a little bit on the tokenism episode. It's us being black. If you complain about things that happen to you, you're singling yourself out. If you do whatever, you're singling yourself out. So I don't know, man. It's just tough being a minority sometimes.
Yeah, see, I understand where you're coming from because I think that these experiences that we have.
See? I'll cut that out. Unless you think I should keep that in. That's pretty funny.
They came for me. My time has come. Oh man. I was gonna say that I completely understand where you're coming from with that because a lot of times those experiences that we have, where you know we're profiled or we're discriminated against, you know, things like that, you know, racism, you know, slaps us across the face. Those things make us angry, and sometimes we like to compartmentalize those things and, you know, not throw them in the face of white people who are our friends because, you know, number one, we don't want to make them feel like it's their fault,
exactly.
You know, because in a technical sense, you know, it's not, you know, their fault. They're not the person that, you know, called the cops on us, or you know, they're not the one that denied us a job, or you know what I mean, things like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and those things make us angry, right? So we don't want to be just, you know, be angry and fulfill that stereotype of the angry black dude. That's another thing as well.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, they, I would say that white people, a lot of white people, I should say, exist kind of in, kind of just ignorant that these things happen to us, you know, and sometimes this, is just, they will look at black people and think that things aren't that bad because, you know, or look at you and think things aren't that bad simply because they haven't heard those stories from you.
Exactly.
You know, they may think your life is hunky dory, because they haven't heard about the stuff that you went through. And so I think that it's important for us to kind of unearth these things when we talk to our white friends. You know, like I have a neighbor, and he's a friend of mine, and we talk about issues of race from time to time. And, you know, with the death of George Floyd, he approached me and asked me what it is he could do because he didn't know what his role was in all of this, but he felt, you know, that something wasn't right in action, you know, on his part. And so, you know, I told him, you know, that look, you are very comfortable with calling the police when you are concerned about something or in the neighborhood, in the apartment complex or whatever. But me, I'm much more hesitant because, you know, of my experiences and what I've seen. I don't even want the most magnanimous, like the most, you know, friendly interactions with police. Sometimes I don't want because I don't know where it's going to go. You know, not because I did anything wrong, but you know, I just the police are kind of just this I don't know, like it's hard to put it into words, man, but it's just like, you know, when you've just been taught from a young age, like you as a black man, if you come into contact with police, even if you did nothing wrong, man, you don't know how things are going to go. You might get hurt, you know, and so
there's too many stories of brothers getting locked up for nothing, you know. And,
that too.
In jail, like.
Yep, that too. And so, you know, it's kind of like this idea of like, you know, that's the reason why I told my neighbor that that I'm a lot more hesitant than you to call the police in situations of concern.
Mhm.
And I also told him, like, look, if you're looking for something to do, just acknowledge that we have a problem of police brutality in this country. Just, acknowledge that there's issues with white privilege, and use yours, because once you acknowledge that there is white privilege, you can begin to use yours to talk about what is right here, to talk about the changes that are necessary. And there are people that will listen to you that wouldn't listen to me, because I'm black, right? And I told him that, and he, was very keyed into it, and he seemed very receptive. And so it's good to have these conversations.
Yeah, I think you just need to stand up for what's right. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't even want to put pressure on people to go too deep. Like, just teach your kids the right way to live, and teach people that black people are all right. You know what I mean? Minorities are okay. Like, I think that's where it stems from. It's when your friend says, "Oh, they all do this," and you go, "Hold up, wait, that's not cool." That means a lot. You know what I mean? Just that hold up, wait, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? And that's what we need you to do. At least that's what I think. I think that's where it starts. You just need to stop ignorance. You know what I mean?
You're right. And ignorance is what we have to fight against, because there's willful ignorance, and there's also just, ignorance that happens organically. Another thing I talked to my neighbor about is, like, he told me that he didn't realize that, that black people have experience such as this. And I told him, like, look, man, a lot of times, white children grow up in homes, and you're just allowed to believe certain things, and you just go on believing them because you're not told otherwise. These topics aren't broached in your home, and so you kind of just grow up, thinking them. Sometimes beliefs about white supremacy, white superiority, those things may not be explicitly said. Your parent might not pull you aside as a white person and be like, "Listen, Johnny." You see them black folk, you're better than all of them. You know what I mean? Like,
I like that slight twang you put on that. What are you insinuating, Brother Rick?
I don't know what I'm insinuating, but my main point is this, though, that I'm sure, I guess I'm not sure. I hope that these conversations don't take place in white households. I don't think they do for the majority of folks, but I think just implicitly, though, just certain experiences that that white people have when they're growing up just kind of teaches them that there's things that you can get away with that minorities can't, or there's things that you can have that minorities can't, and that's just something that you know, kind of like in the base of your skull, you just know it.
Yeah, us minorities, we never got a chance to be blissfully ignorant of the situation, right? This ain't nothing new for us. I remember like when a black person says they had to talk, that can mean two different things, right? That could be, you know what I mean? I remember being in first grade, literally first grade, came home from school, and I forget how this conversation started, but I know how it ended. It ended with my dad saying to me, like, sometimes people won't like you because of what you look like. And like, I was like, what? I was like, I just had recess. What are you dropping on me? You know what I'm saying? And that blew my mind. And ever since then, I was like, crap.
I know, man.
Man, like, this is how it is, and I think that there's been a new wave of white people kind of learning that black people have that talk, or minorities in general have that talk at a young age. And we never get to be blissfully unaware of the situation or circumstances that we're in. Like I said, I've been watching Good Times and Roots and all that stuff since I was a young boy. You know what I mean? We all learned about that stuff, man.
I would say that one of the byproducts of what the unfortunate thing that happened to George Floyd is a lot of people have been reaching out for knowledge about the black experience, and I feel like this reality has been brought to a lot of people's doorsteps, man. Just to bring it to our listeners and help y'all see, how, not to say like silver lining, like, this is a man that shouldn't have died, but I just want to relay to our listeners the impact. Like, after towards the end of May, after George Floyd was killed, our listens skyrocketed. this is due to the fact that people are hungry for information. You know, they want to know what it's like to be a black person. You know, what's going on. They want to hear from black people in this moment. And I think that this is a time for us as black people to seize that moment, to carpe diem, and to let people know.
Like we finally have a platform now. What do we want to say on that platform?
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, and that goes for us as well. And that's the reason why we decided to take on this particular topic for this episode, so that we can give people what they're looking for. You know what I mean? That very real, that very, you know, serious take on, you know, this is what our what life is like for black people. This is how we relate to police, and it's fundamentally different from how you relate to police. And it's not just because of conjecture, or it's not just because of myths or fairy tales that were told by our parents. It's because of real events that have occurred and occur continually in our lives. And so, you know, when someone tells you, or someone wants to talk to you, you just got to take time to listen.
Definitely.
And I think people are doing that right now. I think a lot of people are doing that.
Yeah.
More people than before.
No, it's weird that it just took so much for this to change, you know, man. Like it saddens me to be like, a man had to die for you guys to listen to this, right?
Yeah.
It saddens me that other people had to die as well. Like, it's just, I don't know, man. It's killing me.
That's how I feel too.
Yeah.
It's like it shouldn't have to come to this point, you know, and especially since it's not even just him. Like I said before, it's like it's just this train of names, man.
Yeah,
like, so many names. It's hard to even keep count, and you know,
you can't keep up. Like that's so sad. Like,
yeah, you can't. Even in the aftermath of George Floyd's killing, like, it's like, you know, Rayshard Brooks, you know, immediately pops up, or, you know, right after him, and it's like, man, like, we not even, you know, done being up in arms about this dude right here.
Family wasn't even done mourning. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly. And so it's like it's a continual thing, and so I tell people this it's human psychology. If you are being kicked day after day after day after day, you know, being reminded of your worthlessness day after day after day after day, eventually you will rise up, you know, and fight back, and that's what it is.
Absolutely.
You know, that's what this country was founded upon. That's one thing that blows my mind. You know, where people will be upset about the protests that are going on right now with regards to Black Lives Mattering, right? But they don't understand that this country, you know what I mean? JFK, when you listen to him reading the Declaration of Independence, right? There's that time, right, where you must separate, you know, where the ideological differences, you must make them known, right? That's what the Declaration of Independence says. And so that's what's happening here. That's what happened in 1775. 1776. Yeah, no worries. That's what happened in the 1770s. You know, when America said, you know, enough, Great Britain, enough. You know, we don't want to be taxed without representation. You know, we don't want for soldiers to be, you know, set up in our homes without our consent.
Also, fun fact, really quickly, that also took a black guy dying to help with that. So,
see, look at that. It just comes right back around. You know? Exactly. And you know, Americans said, we don't want to be, you know, conscripted to, you know, wars that have nothing to do with us. You know, all of those things that gave rise to the birth of our nation. You know what I mean? And so why can't it give rise to a new understanding, you know what I mean, of the black experience and how we can enact laws and make real changes that are not just, you know, helping black people, you know, it's helping our entire country.
Yeah, man. This is again a bit of a tangent. I have this weird fascination with like old show tunes. Let's not get into it. And
no judgment.
And there's this one line in the song. I forget the name of the song. I can't really remember how it goes, but the line talks about, if you run into a cop, make sure you're cordial because you don't know what could happen. And this is a song by white people. It's definitely for white people. So you would think that even then, like, the white people are still having issues too. So you would think we want to fix the situation that we're in. It's like, I've seen people get mad at this whole movement because they're saying it's anti-American or anti-whatever, right? Anti-patriotism or whatever. I don't know. I just feel like, what's that?
That's an opinion.
Yeah, right. And not even that. I think that if you are so in love with the system, if you're so infatuated with something, you would want it to be the best that it could possibly be, right? So I would figure that you as an American would say, hey, hold on. You know, my favorite, hold on. My fellow Americans are being subjugated, are being killed in the streets. I should care, because if that guy's doing better, or those group of people are doing better, or those whatever are doing better, it makes the whole country better, right? And you would just wish that mentality was everywhere.
You're absolutely right.
You know what I mean?
The problem with us, and where I feel like we're broken in this era of Trumpism, is that it's not enough to disagree with someone who doesn't have the same views as you. Now you must disavow. Yeah. Right. We see it happening, in the highest levels of politics, where there's not a whole lot of or I should say this, the bipartisanship is not viewed too kindly these days, even though that's the ideal of this country, right? I think that's what our forefathers strove for, was that, people on either side of the aisle to be able to come together and agree on things that, are matters of moral good. We should be able to agree on those things, but it's not enough to just disagree with somebody, or agree to disagree, or be civil, or be polite, or anything of these things, man. Political incorrectness is all the rage now.
It all stems from leadership, dog. Like it's I don't want to, again, we're not trying to pick a side here on Black Lives Matter. I don't want to say he's good or bad president, but I will say that his rhetoric isn't helping the situation. He's a rabble rouser, right? So you're gonna, if he's running a country like that, then everyone else is going to want to be rabble rousers. So that's why being politically incorrect is all the rage, is because the president is politically incorrect. And I understand that's how he came to power, was being like that, essentially. And it sucks, because all that is just dividing the country, man. It's,
true, very divisive.
You could say, oh, he's making us money, oh, he's doing whatever, like, and you can say, like, oh, they don't care, but like, why should we take your feelings into account, or whatever they want to say, people say. But man, when you have a country that's so much about hate, and we won't wear a mask because the president's not wearing a mask, which he did recently, that stuff's scary, man.
It is.
It's scary.
And it's scary to see issues of morality, like,
why does that have anything to do? Like, it should be separate things.
Yeah, and it's sad to see issues of morality, like, should police power be limited to terrorize, minorities and black people? It's sad to see that turned into issues of politics, or people call it politics.
Exactly.
I don't agree with your politics, and it's like, you don't agree that people shouldn't be killed mercilessly without due process and a day in court,
man,
and innocent until proven guilty. Like, you don't agree with those things? Those things seem elementary,
I just know in 5 years from now, I'm with a hot dog, and someone's going to be like, man, that's what a Republican would eat. You know what I'm saying? That's how it's going to be for everything, because everything.
Yeah, so that's what Republicans. Let's kill them.
Yeah, it's like the coffee's looking awfully Democrat-y. Like, it's things that shouldn't be affiliated with a party are like, man.
Yeah. I mean that's what it is, and we've seen it brewing for years. When Colin Kaepernick knelt, for the national anthem during NFL games. People call it politics, but it's like, man, we talking about life and death here. We're talking about justice, and now that I bring that word up, there's one thing that's been in my head, is just like, people are mad about the protests, involving George Floyd and all those other people. They are upset about the looting and the rioting, and it's wild to me how much people want law and order, but don't want justice. Ooh. It's crazy, right?
Put that on the back of the box of the podcast, man.
Dude, I'm telling you, people are so enamored with the idea of law and order.
It's on TV everywhere. It's a very American thing.
Yes, Donald Trump right now is running campaign ads against Joe Biden, basically saying that in Joe Biden's America there will be no police.
Oh.
You will not, literally, that's what they're saying. You won't be safe in Joe Biden's America. It's, of course, fear mongering, but it's that idea that we need law and order. But my question is, what if that law and order comes at the expense of justice? Is it worth it? I don't know.
I mean, it's worth it for the people in the majority, or whatever the proper way to say that. People who aren't affected by it is what I mean.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
True.
For them, it's worth it because they get to remain oblivious. Like you said earlier, that people are, I don't know if you said it, but people are quote unquote annoyed by all these protests and seeing all these things on TV and Twitter and Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, welcome to the party. Like, you know what I mean? We've been like, I remember when I was a young kid, I watched a documentary on the Rodney King beating, and I cried as like a young boy, and I was like, this is it. This is it for us. This is how we were treated in America. I was like, I was taught to love this country, but it turns out the country doesn't love me back. You know what I mean? So
I know what you mean, man. And it's sometimes, it's tough when you face that.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be, a law-abiding, you know what I mean, tax-paying citizen. You're doing your best for a country that does its best for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah.
Even though it should, it doesn't always work out that way.
I hear you. And I don't know what we should segue into after that.
Yeah. Tune in next time.
That's such a bleak though.
Black inventors.
Some happy-go-lucky music. Black Lives Chatter.
We're going to talk about interracial relationships. Happiness, romance.
Dog, I wasn't ready to get depressed. Well,
yeah, I know, but that's what it is. Yo. It's just that time in history, man, where like is deep right now, man.
Yeah.
And it's hard because like you look at the history, right? That's what we had to do for this episode. You look at the history and realize, like, man, like we've been at this for a while.
Yeah,
man.
My daddy's daddy, and his daddy.
Yo,
like, it's not.
It's like at some point, when do you get tired, man? Or at what point if you're on the outside looking in, how do you not understand that as a people, African Americans would be tired? I don't know. But yeah, it's I think we're at a time where we all need to do just as much as we can to learn more about what we can do to make sure that more lives aren't lost to police brutality. If that involves funneling some of the money that goes into police departments into other areas of the community, like education, like mental health, resources that will, prevent the cops from ever having to be called to a scene. If that's what it takes, man, if justice can prevail over law and order, I think that's a future that, it could be a bright one.
Yeah, man, I agree. We just need to target those things that have been plaguing our community, like recidivism and other things like that. We need to have programs that help us get better, or help people get better in general, as opposed to just locking them up and throwing away the key. You know what I mean? You could be drunk on a Friday night and like be in a drunk tank, and that can like ruin the rest of your life. It's
true.
We just need
or
to.
You could. Yeah, my bad.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like you said, you could be in a drunk tank and that ruin your life, or catch a possession charge.
Bruh.
And be in prison for decades. That's happened.
Well,
man.
people in other parts of the country are making millions off of it legally.
Yeah,
I couldn't imagine that, man. Could you imagine going to jail for weed?
Dude, that's a whole nother episode.
This like pretty American girl is like, yeah, I got this whole big farm up here in California. Like
well, I'm telling you, man, I got my whole business. I got an online store. I'm selling T-shirts with cannabis flowers on them and cannabis leaves on them.
About to be legal in Jersey.
Like, you got arrested for that? Couldn't be me.
I hope we really take care of those people, man, who are in prison right now. Once weed is legal, because it's going to be legal in Jersey. So,
yeah.
But yeah, man, that is a whole episode.
that is a whole episode.
Yeah, sorry to everyone. This wasn't as our banter wasn't as witty on this one. We kind of just poured our hearts out, and this is just how we're feeling, man. Like,
yeah, at some point, you gotta hear what it's like.
Yeah, man. It ain't always rainbows and gumdrops. You know what I'm saying?
Nah. But yeah, I mean, let's take this time to remind you guys about the What's the Chat segment. You could just send us a recording of yourself from your phone. Mm-hmm. Talk about, who you are. You know what I mean? What got you listening to BLC? What do you enjoy about the show? Any topics you think that we should cover? Anything that you'd like to talk about? We do Black Lives Spotlight segments on our social media, like our Instagram. We highlight the lives of historical figures. Who would you like us to do research on and talk about during those segments? Just talk to us, in a little voice recording, for a chance to have it actually included. Once we have enough of those recordings, I don't think we have a whole lot right now. We'll actually put it in an episode. You'll get to hear your voice, which I think would be pretty cool once we get that together. Yep. All right, Brother Vic, anything else you want to add before we take it home?
Yeah, I just want to say that there's plenty of different ways that you can help show your support for Black lives and justice. You can do so by protesting, you can sign petitions, and you can donate to the organizations that are helping to restore justice and equality, and that help the families of victims of police brutality. You can also help by just being vocal on social media and among your friends and family about the need for positive change, right? You can continue to educate yourself, which we will be there to help you because we're educating ourselves and we're taking you along on that journey, right? But that's about it, man. And thanks for listening, guys. And until next time, BLC out.
Facts, all the information gathered, not just a podcast. This is Black Lives Chatter. 1, you need to know that Black Lives Matter. 2, we believe in love, we believe in laughter. 3, we bringing facts, all the information gathered, not just a podcast. This is Black Lives Chatter. Vic and Ricky in the lab with a sound mind. 2 black kings, I think it's crown time. Turn on the cast and you're up for your downtime. We need a Black Lives outlet, think I found mine.
Black Lives Chatter because Black Lives Matter. We got interviews, opinions, and plenty witty banter. Keep you updated on the topics of the culture. Listen to the news while we watch out for the vultures.
1, you need to know that Black Lives Matter. 2, we believe in love, we believe in laughter. 3, we bringing facts, all the information gathered, not just a podcast. This is Black Lives Chatter. 1, you need to know that Black Lives Matter. 2, we believe in love, we believe in laughter. 3, we bringing facts, all the information gathered, not just a podcast. This is Black Lives Chatter.
Okay. So, Brother Rick, this might sound like a dumb question, but I feel like our listeners need to know. What is the Black Ladders?
The Black Ladders. Black Ladders matter.
But they do, though. They really do.